I think I'm very, very lucky to be a guitar maker, because I think it's a profession which has got so many different facets, from choosing raw material, from working with raw material, to creating sound, to creating design, structure, working with the workshop environment, which is a beautiful environment to work in. And I think that, and obviously the most rewarding situation is that I'm building a product, building something which has a lot of value to the person who receives it in the end, the customer, the client, the player. And for me, it's a very, very rewarding moment to have worked and sweated blood and tears to make an instrument to the best of my ability. And it's a very hard thing to make a fantastic guitar. It's a very, very difficult thing to make a really top-level instrument. Then to be rewarded with the client's appreciation of my work is for me a great, great sense of achievement.
Hello, my name is Genci. I'm from Croatia.
And I'm Stephen Hill, as you know. And Jens is here for the international guitar competition, the Andrei Segovia International Guitar Competition 2006. And so he's staying with me, which is very nice. And it's a great opportunity for me also to show my instruments to Jens and also to the other players, to get a real opinion, good and bad, about my instruments. What do you reckon?
It's a very good guitar. It's new.
Very new. It's only,
Yeah,
I think it's been strung maybe 1 week, something like this.
So it needs some time to open.
To open up, yeah.
It's very warm. I think it will be very loud.
At that moment when the player takes the guitar, that is still very early days for the instrument, because the guitar can also be moulded. I'm moulding the guitar from the raw material, producing something that I feel is right with my experience. Then there's a strange phenomenon that when the player then takes the instrument, they also are inputting into that instrument. It's not like an inanimate object where that's it. The guitar is just it's as it's going to be for the rest of its life. There's what we could perhaps call a vibrational element to the instrument, where you can input, even after the construction, input the player's imprint onto the instrument, and a top player can radically change an instrument or improve an instrument just by playing that guitar in perfect tune with sensitivity, and can work the instrument, and it can transform the instrument from a great instrument into a fantastic instrument. Likewise, a bad player can transform an exceptional instrument into something perhaps mediocre, and then handing that instrument to a top player, you can almost sometimes see the instrument changing, or feel or hear the instrument changing into perhaps what it should be. So the guitar is an instrument which is incredibly fickle. It's a really fickle instrument, and that is, I think, is quite clear in sometimes the nature of the music that's played on the instrument. With flamenco, it's a very life and death experience. The most rewarding moment for a maker is when the player is at one with the instrument in a concert setting, playing in front of people, and he's totally at home with the instrument. He's a master of the guitar, and I would hope I'm a master maker. And that moment where the masters come together and they produce something fantastic, it's so rewarding for everybody at that moment. And that's why that's why I think guitar makers and players can continue to do their art. For me, there's been some defining moments of great fruition. One of which was where I think it was my 7th instrument that I handed to the player, and he played a concert that very night on this new instrument. And this was in Lewis in a concert hall, and he played the instrument and was playing a particularly beautiful piece of music, and there's one high note where he was playing and he hit that high note, and it was I'm not sure if the entire audience felt that, but I certainly felt that, and I think a number of people remarked on how great the instrument sounded. But that moment when he hit that note, it sent a sort of quiver, a sort of vibration through me of absolute sort of bliss and ecstaticness. And he also felt that moment was something beyond the music. And I think that was a sort of culmination of the instrument and the player and the maker coming together, producing a moment of what they call in Spain, what they call duende. Duende is supposed to be, I think it would translate as a fleeting moment of magicalness, where everyone is suddenly transported out of themselves into a common experience of an elevation of their state. You could call it a sort of mystical or a spiritual state, but there's a moment which is very tangible of completeness. At that moment, everything's perfect and everything's right, accompanied by a feeling of bliss and excitement. One of the reasons why I came to Spain was to give my work as a guitar maker, as an artesano de la guitarra, was to give my work a different dimension, coming back to the roots of the origins of what I do as a guitar maker, making flamenco and classical guitars. And the earth and the nature and the sun, especially the sun, has given me, I think, a sense of the origins of the music of flamenco, for instance. And the sound of the instrument, the sound of the guitar, is also somehow relates very closely to the landscape, to the space we have here. And Spain can sometimes be quite melancholic and quite joyful and quite exuberant as well. But we have to remember perhaps that life here was actually quite hard for many, many people, and essentially Spain has evolved from quite a strong peasant culture. People working the land, most people working the land. And now we see around us, we see perhaps a renewal of that, people coming back to the land, back to their houses that they've perhaps abandoned for their life on the coasts. Those people have been poor and have had a hard life. If a crop failed, they went hungry. And so that is what I think gives perhaps flamenco its edge, its sadness as well, because life was hard. And to come back to here, to come back to Spain, to be, for a while, be in this environment, I think can give my instruments a sense of, a slightly deeper sense of reality. It's interesting that in the guitar making world that we have woods and tools and lots of different things from different countries all over the world. And the guitar is essentially historically Spanish. But even in the early days of the guitar making in the 1800s, 1900s, timber was coming from South America, Brazil, the Spanish Empire. Its origins, though, go back not to Spain, but to North Africa and the Middle East. And the word guitar, the word tar in guitar means string. So we have an instrument in Syria, I think, called the tar, and different parts of the Middle East. So when the Arabs left Spain, they left behind them the oud, which means in Arabic means wood, stringed wooden instrument. And this was converted by the Spaniards into what is called the vihuela. If you look at old manuscripts and books and things produced around about the sort of 14, 1500s, we see an instrument which is just the beginnings of the guitar shape, this hourglass shape. And then it's slowly evolved within Spain from the vihuela into the four-course Baroque guitar, then into the 19th century guitar, which was then adopted by France and Italy and Germany. Whereas in Spain, they suddenly came up around about 1830, 1840, a man called Antonio de Torres, whose birthplace was not that far from here in a place called Almeria. Antonio de Torres. And he produced an instrument which essentially was shaped like this, which is the modern shape that we now associate with the guitar. And he was the first maker to actually produce this shape using a different form of strutting system inside. And I've been very fortunate to have known various Torres guitars. And in fact, in my workshop in England, I had two Torres guitars on the bench, side by side, with an approximate value standing on my workbench of around about £200,000, something like that. And that moment standing there with two Antonio de Torres guitars in my workshop, I looked at the guitar and realised that I was holding the first of the modern guitars, the first instrument which has been, in a sense, created, has evolved, but has been created, or was created by Antonio de Torres. And feeling that instrument being the first, not the millionth guitar produced in that style, but the very first instruments produced in that style, was quite a feeling, quite a moment. Life was incredibly busy and frantic, and my shop was very busy selling instruments, not just mine, but other instruments from Spain. And coming here, especially working up in Riscate, in my house here, where I spend all day alone, apart from when my students come, this has given me a lot of time to contemplate my work and to find more of a sense of inner motivation as to why I'm making guitars. And it's taken me quite a long time to adjust, because the environment and the impetus to make guitars is very different here. And I think finally, just recently, I've come to a point where I feel inspired to make guitars in a different way, with a slightly different vision. As I said, maybe this has come about through the landscape and the people and the sunshine. But it's also come about through contemplation and being in a simple environment. And I would hope that reflects in a different quality, a different form of my instruments. And no doubt one day I'll return back to England, but I hope that my experience in Spain has given me something to push me on to the next level of my instrument making, to be an artisano de la guitarra.